Hello children. Now you have done pollination and now you know that the pollen grains are transferred from the anthers to the stigma so that further action could be taken, that is the act of fertilization can take place. So what exactly is fertilization? The process of fusion of male and female gamete to give rise to embryo that will be able to give rise to another plant. This is known as fertilization. You all are aware of because you have studied this in lower class. Now let us understand this with a very simple diagram, and if you will concentrate you will understand it in a very better way. You will be able to grasp it properly. Now see what is happening. You have got this diagram. This is the female reproductive organ. This is pistil where you have stigma, style and ovary. I have drawn a big diagram so that you can see everything clearly. So you have a stigma, style and ovary. You have got pollen grain that comes on the stigma. Now when it was brought from some flower to this particular flower and it was dropped here, this process was termed as fertilization. That is what we have done in our previous video. Now the pollen grain will send its pollen tube, a long tube. That is why styles are long, so that the strongest pollen grains can survive, and will send their pollen tube down here into this structure, that is ovary. Okay. Now we will discuss the structure of ovary now. Now as you see, this is ovary. These all cells are diploid. In my video on sexual reproduction, I have told you haploid and diploid. So you must know that all the cells of the body are generally diploid. Only the reproductive cells are haploid. So all the cells are diploid and this entire structure is known as ovary. Here this structure is known as ovule. These pencil linings, they reflect ovule. The structure of ovule you will study in your higher classes. So this is ovule, and inside ovule you have got embryo sac. So this structure inside is known as embryo sac. Now embryo sac is formed as a result of meiosis in the male reproductive cell. So now this will be haploid. All the cells will be haploid, that is they will contain only one set of chromosome and it will be designated by N. You already know that diploid is 2N, then meiosis occurs, and after meiosis you have single N, that is haploid. Now there are 8 nuclei here. See how they are distributed. These 3 nuclei are known as antipodals, so I have written 3 antipodals to make it clear. Then you have got 2 nuclei floating in the same cell in the center. These are known as polar nuclei because they have actually came from these poles. They have come from these poles, and that is why it is known as polar nuclei. So you have 2 polar nuclei. 3 antipodals and 2 polar nuclei is equal to 5. Then you have 2 synergids, this one and this orange one. These are 2 synergids. These are the ones that nurture the egg. The central red one is egg, a single one. And it is nurtured and taken care of by these synergids as far as energy is concerned. So you have 3 plus 2 plus 1 plus 2. So it becomes 8. This embryo sac has got 8 nucleus or 8 nuclei since they are plural. Now while male gamete are transferred, or the pollen tube carrying the male gametes, they make their entry inside the embryo sac through a pore which is known as micropile entry of pollen tube. So the pollen tube will enter inside the ovule and reach out to embryo sac from the point that is known as micropile. And this pollen tube, while it is making its way and entering, its nucleus will divide into 2 male gametes. So they are now known as 2 male gametes. You can see these 2 black dots, these are male gametes. Now what will happen? Now fertilization will happen because the pollen tube has reached inside the embryo sac where we have egg. Now egg is there, male gametes are there, so fusion must take place. Now see what happens. One of the male gametes, since you have two, one of the male gamete and the egg fuse with each other, and the process of fusion of male gamete and female gamete, that is egg and male gamete, is known as syngamy. So you have syngamy where male gamete and egg will fuse, n plus n will be 2n, and embryo will become diploid again. This embryo will be giving rise to the new plant later on. Whereas the other male gamete, as you can see, is fusing with these two polar nuclei. So these two polar nuclei along with this left male gamete will be fusing together. Now there are two nuclei, n plus n from here. You have n plus n plus n. That is why, since three nuclei are fusing together, it is known as triple fusion. And you will have 3n. That is triploid nucleus formed now. Triploid. This is diploid, this is triploid. So polar nuclei, two of them and one male gamete will give triploid nucleus, which will be known as endosperm. You must understand that endosperm is the only cell which is triploid in the plant. Rest all the cells are either diploid or reproductive cells, they are haploid. Now endosperm is actually the first nucleus, that is triploid nucleus, that is formed, is known as primary endosperm nucleus. You call it as PEN. It comes in your Olympiads and all that. So you may learn from here PEN, primary endosperm nucleus, the first triploid nucleus. This will undergo mitosis many times. Many more divisions will cause endosperm to develop. And what is the function of endosperm? Nourishment. Whereas the second one is diploid embryo, that is going to give rise to the new plant. So you have two processes occurring. One is syngamy, where male and female gamete fuse together, and other where male gamete fuses with the polar nuclei, and that is known as triple fusion. So twice the fusion is occurring. Triple fusion is happening, and syngamy is happening here. That is why, since the fusion is occurring twice, this is known as double fertilization. So the entire process, since there are two male gametes fusing to different cells or different nuclei, the process has been termed as triple fusion syngamy, which is equivalent to double fertilization. So that is why we say that angiosperms show double fertilization. So this is the fertilization act that is happening, where you have got the haploid part of the ovary, that is known as embryo sac. So embryo sac is always formed after meiosis because it is haploid, and here also male gametes are formed because of meiosis, and that is why they are also haploid.